Okay, so welcome everybody. This is our 12th year. This is Design Incubation Colloquium 12.1. I'd like to welcome you all to our um, presentations. Today we have 6 presentations for you. Um, but first, I'd like to introduce myself and the organization for those people who are relatively new. My name is Dan Wong. I am one of the co-founders and the executive director of Design Incubation. We've been doing this for over a decade now to facilitate research in the field of communication design. Just a few announcements I wanted to make. First is that we currently have the annual Design Incubation Educators Awards right now. So we are open for entries and also for nominations. I highly, highly recommend everybody to nominate their colleagues. Oftentimes people are doing this research and they don't understand how wonderful it is, the work that they're doing. So definitely nominate your colleagues, and you do not need a nomination in order to submit. So if you are really happy with your work, absolutely submit your work on your own. Don't wait for a nomination. The deadline for that is December 31st. And you can check out, and I'll put it in the chat here, you can check out the more details on the website right there. Another announcement that I would like to make is the Design Writing Fellowship, formerly the Design Incubation Writing Fellowship. They've broken off and they are now their own entity that is run by Maggie Taft and also facilitated by Era Sharon, Liette Verdugo, and Robin Landa. Those applications are currently open. The deadline for submissions, I believe, is December 1st. I'll put that in the chat as well. And I believe there's 3 tracks. I believe they're introducing a 4th track. The 3 tracks, if I remember correctly, are a reviews track, so writing exhibition and book reviews. Another track is developing your own academic journal article. And the 3rd track is writing book proposals and developing your own books with publishers such as Bloomsbury. Bloomsbury oftentimes is a sponsor of the program. And I believe that this year they are introducing a pedagogy track as well. So check out that on the website. And then finally, we are in the midst of developing the upcoming academic year, the colloquia such as these. We know that everybody is struggling with budgets. So people do no longer or have very small travel budgets, very small scholarship budgets. We're expected to be doing these things, but we don't really have the funding for it. So we've decided that we're going to kind of double down on the online versions of this because it allows people to submit work. So we're going to be doing one in June. As you know, some of you may know, we always do CAA conference, so that is happening in February. And we're currently developing one for June. So prepare your abstracts. We're actually, I believe, going to have 2 tracks for that. back to back or overlapping. One of them is going to be for faculty and researchers, and then there's going to be also a track specific to graduate students because we're finding that there's a lot of graduate student submissions. And that so the submission, so we'll make the announcement probably around January, and then the event itself will be in June. I don't know if there was anything else, Kat, that you had to add regarding that.
No, I think that is great.
Okay. Oh yeah, a couple of other things. We're always looking for peer reviewers. So we often reach out to those of you who have presented at our events. So there's that aspect of it. The other thing is that we're always looking for people to host our colloquia. For the online versions, that's actually relatively easy. What that means is that you will market it in your area. So you'll market it to local colleges and universities in your area so that there's kind of a focus on the various areas around the country. So if you are interested in doing that, please let Kat or myself know that you're interested, and we can kind of step you through that process. At this point, I'm handing things over to Kat. Thank you all for joining
Yes.
us.
Great. Thanks, Dan. And thanks everyone for being here. Yes, I will reiterate because I had that in my closing remarks announcements of if you are interested in being a peer reviewer or if you are interested in hosting a colloquium, we would love to hear from you. And I can always talk or we can talk details about what that entails. My name is Kat Normoyle. Thank you so much for being here. I am the Director of Peer Review with Design Incubation. I've been with the organization now for about a year and a half. And although prior I participated as a panelist and researcher as well with the organization, and have known Dan for a long time, which is a great colleague and partner in the organization. Something I'm particularly proud about and really enjoy contributing with this organization is a big part of peer review. And when we do these colloquiums, that's really valuable, I think, to our community is that when researchers are submitting work and getting feedback, we do external blind review. And part of our mission is that we, regardless of acceptance status, you receive feedback from external reviews and blind review. And so we're really committed to that contribution of helping colleagues, researchers, educators, practitioners get that feedback so you can develop your work. And so I like to always kind of speak to that at the beginning of a colloquium because it's I think a valuable part of our design community. Today's program, we have seven panelists here today, but six presentations. We have a couple collaborations happening too that we'll share, but we have a lot of great things in store for you. So I'll tell you a little bit about some of the work that you'll be hearing about. We have work that ranges from scholarly research to design pedagogy, creative practice, and at all levels of different career paths. We have a little bit of history, historian kind of perspective, all the way to some practices with new technology. We're talking about like workflows and speeding things up and workflows and slowing things down. And so I think we have a really nice range of work that's going to be coming to you from our speakers today. And we're really thrilled to have, thank you so much, speakers, for submitting your work and being here today to share that work with our audience. We will, let's see, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists, but they'll each introduce themselves and their work when we get started with the main program. I'll go down the line in order of our agenda. Elizabeth Resnick, Professor Emeriti from Massachusetts College of Art and Design. R.J. Thompson, Associate Professor in a University of Pittsburgh. Kyla Paolucci, Assistant Professor at St. John's University is here. Vic Rodriguez Tang, Assistant Professor at Texas State University. Summer Dahl Myers, Associate Professor at Kutztown University. Jalen Wing, Assistant Professor at Otis College of Art and Design. And Sarah Piramadian, graduate student from the Ohio State University. We're so thankful that you're here today, and so we'll get started with our program. Our first speaker, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I think we can see, yes. Our first speaker today is Elizabeth Resnick, who will be speaking about women graphic designers and rebalancing the canon.
Should I start?
Yes.
Is the slide up?
Well,
Because I can't
now
see anything.
It was on my screen. Let me make sure I still have this up.
If you have any problems, I might need to make you a host.
Okay.
Is that me, Dan? Or
Yeah, I can't even see myself on the screen. I'm not up. But you can see me.
I can see you, and I can see the slide.
It doesn't seem like you're sharing on my end.
Let me see. Let me try this again. Share. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
The slide?
Yes.
See the screen. I don't see me though, but I guess as long as you guys see me, it's okay.
I can see you, Elizabeth.
I could see you too.
Very strange. Okay, well, let me begin my very short introduction. Hopefully people have had an opportunity to see the little Pechakucha I put together. I want to talk a little bit about pivoting. I am a professor emerita from the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. I taught there for well over 40 years. It's an absolute wonderful place with inspiring students. Since my, I'd say, retirement, I've been able to focus in on continuing my exhibition projects as well as my publishing projects. I remain, although I am no longer in the classroom, I did leave in 2021. I am committed to creating what I consider relevant pedagogy to use for resources in today's contemporary design classroom. And since I have the time, the energy, and the passion to do that, that's what I've been doing. So the latest project, which has just been published by Bloomsbury Visual Arts, is titled Women Graphic Designers, with a subtitle of Rebalancing the Canon. And simply put, this book is an anthology of 42 amazing stories profiling 44 women from Europe, Asia, North and South America, South Africa, and Australia. The idea behind this book really comes from the pivot I did, I'd say, in about 2015, where I began to research what we'll call for now hidden women of design. Two of the women who were alumni at the Massachusetts College of Art, as it was known then, were Muriel Cooper, who graduated in 1948, and Jacqueline Casey, who graduated in 1949. And although the women were known in Boston, their work was really never quite disseminated as it would have been, I believe, if they were men. So I began researching the the Office of Publications at MIT, which both women worked at. And that really stimulated an interest for me to tell their stories. Fortunately, the editor and publisher of I Magazine in the UK, John L. Walters, um, was fascinated by this work, and he has been publishing my stories of these not so well known women to an international audience. That led to my thinking that there were probably so many stories out there of hidden women in all cultures. So I did a call for stories from an international group of people who I had been working with through some of my international poster exhibitions. And it netted amazing proposals for women that I and many others have never heard of, but who were actually somewhat known in their own cultures, but clearly not beyond their borders. So this particular volume that's come out, these are not just, they're not profiles. They're not the 100-word profiles you often see in so many of these collections. These are full stories of these women's careers, as I like to say, as the whole complex person they were and still are, uh, and warts and all. So you really get an idea of their journey and the obstacles they all faced in being women in what is, for the most part, a worldwide patriarchal society. So I do hope you have an opportunity to get this book and read these amazing stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I didn't mention at the beginning of the program, but please note your questions along the way, and we'll be doing our Q&A after all the speakers have a chance to present. Thank you so much. So the next speaker will be RJ Thompson, and he'll be presenting the key work using AI for insight, not replacement, in creative practice.
Hi there, everyone. My name is RJ Thompson. Thank you, Kat, very much for the introduction. I am a teaching associate professor in digital narrative and interactive design in the Department of English, of all places, at the University of Pittsburgh. And I'm really excited to share this project with you. So previous to my joining the faculty at Pitt full-time, I was the manager of digital strategy for the health science schools at the university. And so basically, I was a marketing director for the 6 schools of the health sciences, which includes medical school, pharmacy, dental medicine, nursing, public health, and rehabilitation sciences. So I had to have a very broad and deep set of knowledge on all of the practitioners and inventions and, all kinds of innovations that are happening throughout the schools. At the time of the key work, we were getting ready for a massive enterprise level rebrand. And one of the things that the schools were individually challenged with was telling all of their stories. And we're sitting on thousands and thousands of stories. And so myself and my team, we decided to use AI to glean as much insight as we could from all of the stories that had been told throughout the years. And so the key work is actually research primarily in linguistics and word usage. Primarily, we sourced 5 years worth of alumni magazines, blogs, websites, news articles, and through the millions and millions and millions of words that we scanned through, we were able to determine the most frequently used words, which were representative of the brand pillars of each of the individual schools, and then an aggregate of the entire health sciences system itself. And through that, we were able to create a storytelling formula known as the key work, where we paired adjectives together to tell an evergreen amount of stories across all of the 150 different degree programs in the health sciences system. And one thing I do want to note here is that in higher education, particularly on the staff side, there is a prevailing and unfortunate perception that while some staff, marketing, design staff are extremely talented, most of the work that they do with storytelling and advertising goes out to agencies. And the key work was an effort to prove that we have the talent to do this high level quality of work. The last thing I'll say about this is while we use ChatGPT to do much, if not all, of the quantitative and qualitative analysis, we decided to maintain the human element to creation, to creativity. And so we took all of those words, all of those pairings, came up with our own advertising concepts and our own designs. And I'm really pleased with the outcome. And I think that this model will be very replicable at varying institutions, and I welcome your feedback and insight. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, RJ. Our next speakers are Kyla Paolucci and Vic Rodriguez Tang, presenting Make, Print, Share, Collective Learning Through Risograph Printing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. So I guess I'll kick it off. I'm Kyla. I teach graphic design at St. John's University. And Vic and I went to grad school together and we reconnected at the Design Educators Conference. And Vic knows that I had brand new access to a risograph printer at St. John's. And Vic, if you want to talk about your background with risograph and how you approached me to start this project together.
Yeah, hi, my name is Vic. Yeah, Kyle and I reconnected. We went to grad school together. I'm new to risograph. I'm on my second year at Texas State University, and this new machine I was very intrigued about, and I'm just in casual conversation. Kyle and I was like, we should try to learn together. So this is the framework that we have created.
Yeah, I think we're both drawn to Riso because of its countercultural roots. And when a school has a risograph machine, often they're underutilized. A lot of teachers that I've seen recently have been taking programs at School of Visual Arts to learn how to use the Riso to bring back to the classes. So it's our goal as we learn together to basically develop very entry-level prompts that we can also share with our students later. I have a Miro board I can quickly show that shows you the process that Vic and I had started with one another. So here is our first prompt where we introduce our goal, the instructions on how we use the machine. And then Vic suggested that as we experiment, let's document every single part of the process so we can document this and provide these prompts and learnings to other educators who are interested in the accessible nature of the tool.
Yeah, for us, it was all about building community and making this accessible to our students. Just like many other subcultures in design, there's a lot of gatekeeping. So we're trying to combat that by forming community and providing an educational tool that has a low stake, easy entry level access to the creative technologies and art. So in order for us to create this, we needed to try it ourselves. So we have been testing different things. Like Kyla say, we have the same prompt, but we have done things very different just based on the same prompt. And we also have to problem solve because as if you have used a Riso before, they're very finicky. Like you move one thing like a millimeter and everything breaks. So we've been documenting that to see how we can learn, and if we came across that issue again, how do we problem solve for that? So when we're teaching this to our students, we have a little more knowledge, and a lot of these things are we are learning as we go. So there's going to be challenges that present themselves that we're going to have to learn with the students, but we want to make this accessible and create a safe space for learning so students are not intimidated by a tool like this. And some students have never seen this, or they may not know that this is a possibility for a creative career. So we want to just present another option that can provide more opportunities to students.
Yeah, and also it's a great tool for educators in design and beyond to learn specific design principles and not just teach Riso as a specialized resource or tool, but kind of slowing down and finding the learning in the process. That's all.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next speaker is Summer Dahl Myers, who will be presenting From Denim Wars to AI, Rethinking Fashion Advertising in the Classroom.
Okay, hi, like Kat mentioned, I'm Summer Dahl Myers from Kutztown University in Pennsylvania. I teach in the art and design department within the communication design program. My work as an advertising design educator revolves around mindful and socially responsible communication. Many of the projects I teach focus on social good, storytelling, and helping students understand the weight of the messages they create. In the last few years, the cultural and technological landscape around design, including fashion design advertising, has seen its changes. My presentation focuses on the long-standing fashion advertising assignment that I give my juniors that has been tweaked to be a bit more critical and more culturally connected. One that asks students to think about authenticity and now AI and brand politics. Um, Most of the project this time around, I did keep the same, but I verbally let the students know that they were allowed to use for the first time ever in this project AI for backgrounds and details if they needed with my approval. I thought more would take me up on that offer, so it was interesting to see the outcomes of the projects this semester, it was just due like last week. Students conceptualize, plan, and then shoot their own photos for this integrated fashion campaign. The project has seen students that are completely pushed outside their comfort zones, but then ones that fall in love with this type of design. Um, Once the students were like 95% done with the project, is when we examined these key campaigns. Starting at the beginning of, I guess the end of the summer, I would receive emails and text messages from former students and colleagues asking me what I thought, my personal opinion on some of these recent campaigns, which I love that they come to me with that. The first campaign we talked about was the Sydney Sweeney American Eagle collab, the Sydney Sweeney Has Great Jeans campaign. Then we moved on to the Gap's Better and Denim milkshake featuring girl group Cat's Eye and the Y2K musical hit Milkshake by Kellis. After that, we moved to the J. Crew's nostalgic ad campaign that used AI to mimic their 90s and 80s catalog covers. It was said by reviewers to be AI slop and creatively bankrupt. Lastly, we moved to Aries, a very recent campaign in October that reminded consumers that they have always been committed to not retouching their models, but now needed to reinforce that they will also not be using AI in their models. And they had a nod to not using it in the creation of their ads either. So after that, we had a very open and candid conversation. Some students were actually very mad. And then I gave them a Google form to get some more feedback. And it was just really interesting to see what this particular generation had to say about these campaigns. I do think it's important we continue to bring these topics up as they move forward into the field. And then I just end on this question, how do we teach responsible, culturally aware design in a moment where the meaning of authenticity is shifting?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jelaine Wang presenting Born Digital, Fresh Attempts Around Typography Courses for Students Today.
Thank you, Kat. Hello, guys. I'm Jalen, and currently I'm teaching at Otis of College of Art, at a major of graphic design for BFA and MFA. So before that, I was teaching at Boston University for graphic design and also media science. at SFA, which is College of Fine Art, and also College of Communication. Um, so, so for this topic, actually, I also have another collaborator. She's not here today. His Igor Zhang, also our program head for MFA graphic design at Otis. So we're trying actually just starting by being like situating today's work inside this like kind of large question, which is how do we train our eyes, especially our mind, to see typography differently in a world that is already shifted from this analog logic to this more like digital narrative perceptions. And so we basically started with this kind of very mini 2 weeks project. It's called Pushing Pixels. So we are kind of like returning to this fundamental moment in this design history, which is the moment that letters were reduces to this like really tiny unit of information, which is the pixels, by redrawing this character instead of like shrinking grids from 10 by 10 to 4 by 4. So we're not only like testing like the visual limit, but also we ask students that is examining the like what remains when a letter is stripped to this like really smallest possible decisions. And also we are kind of like ask the class, ask like especially that is that is class which is they receive as their like very first typography class, that how much can we actually take away before like the meaning collapses. So after that, we are gonna moving into another project. It's called typology. So as we define it as kind of like a bridge between this typographic archive of visual typology. So around like one single object. And so as almost are trying to create this kind of like sculpture, like 3D based of like typo like typographical like work, and also as kind of like conducting this idea, which is the archaeology for the present, to use this as its entire project. So there are two parts. One is more like editorial based. It's called encyclopedia. So we're doing like zines for each single object. And the second part, which is it's called the still life, which is the first slide that you showed up from this from the whole presentation. And so we're trying to use the assignments not only like connected with technologies, but also is about like retraining the perception. And by just moving like pixels, like encyclopedia observations, 3D typographic surfaces. We ask students to see like, can we see like type as more like a form, as a living medium that can carry thought across like dimensions. So all those exercises, actually, those are kind of like really small rehearsals for kind of like large idea, which is, like typography is no longer only limited to the page, like or our like imaginations. It will be crossing surfaces. It will take more meanings and also statement that is from this certain digital era, and also how we can push it and also use it as some kind of pedagogy, and also like idea to further like students practice, and also to allow them to be more comfortable to use type, just start from something new, and to create something which is wild and also experimental. You're muted, Cat.
Thank you. My dog started barking. Thank you so much, Jalen.
Sure. Yeah.
Our final speaker in the panel is Sarah Piramadian, who will be presenting on misunderstanding, reframing language barriers, and miscommunication through interactive design. I think you might be muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I'm a third year MFA candidate in graphic design at Ohio University. And today I'm sharing my project, Misunderstanding, which explores language barriers and miscommunication through interactive design. This project begins with a simple question. What does it actually feel like to communicate in a language that isn't your own? For many non-native speakers, miscommunication isn't just a linguistic issue. It's an emotional and cognitive experience. There is hesitation, delay, and the invisible work of trying to be understood. My installations turn this invisible labor into something physical and visible. Uh, in the most recent piece, Persian text is projected on the wall, and the English translation appears only when the viewer moves. Their body become a tool for revealing meaning. This mirrors the real adjustment non-native speakers make using gesture, movement to fill communication gaps. Uh, well, uh, Earlier iterations shaped this direction. One version involved a single participant speaking into a microphone, while their words appeared with intentional distortion on the wall. And another version was a dual conversation table where two participants couldn't hear each other and instead communicated through fragmented text. These prototypes revealed how meaning shifts when sound, timing, and language become unstable. Methodology-wise, the project used projection mapping, P5JS creative coding, which is a JavaScript library, and motion tracking and voice interaction. It follows a practice-based approach. Each installation acts as a test, and participant reactions like confusion, hesitation, or adaptation directly guide the next iteration. My work also enters dialogue with artists like Celido Murilis and Paige Zilling, who explore language and perception in immersive ways. And where my project differs is its focus on the felt experience of misunderstanding. So mainly I focus on the experience itself. So like the instability and effort behind everyday communication rather than just translation or language as content. Ultimately, misunderstanding aims to create an embodied form of empathy. When someone has to move their body just to read a sentence, they briefly feel the extra effort that non-native speakers perform every day. That shift from an intellectual idea to a lived sensation is the heart of this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our speakers. Stop sharing right now. So I want to open up to some questions. I'm going to open the chat so I can see if questions appear there. So to our audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask or write them in the chat window. I'll try to keep an eye on that, and I think my colleague here, Dan, will do so as well.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. And but I'll start the conversation just maybe by asking a couple of general questions. We heard a lot about some great topics and a lot of different varied ideas. One thing I've been thinking about is we had a few speakers talking about ways like of expanding on the contribution in our field in design. So really thinking about whether it's new knowledge and researching women graphic designers and expanding on the canon, whether it's thinking about tools and how we use them, with working with AI for helping us process ways of thinking and knowing information, or even working with tools to inform our making. Would any of the panelists care to speak a little bit about the way they're thinking about the contributions of the work that they're developing, and how that shifts the thinking within graphic design, whether it's the field or maybe the ways that we work in our contemporary practice?
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Vic, because you start and I can probably add on.
yeah, I think with my students, one thing that I notice is that they spend so much time in the computer that they don't want to be in the computer. Like, we try different things like mood boards for just like different projects, and they're like, we do not want to be on Pinterest or Miro. We want to do it by hand. So this is kind of an expansion of that, like the practice that Kyle and I have. So we can still introduce those type of tools and show like the importance and the value on it. Students tend to be really concerned about AI and how fast things are changing, but there's still a lot of value on learning fundamentals through analog methods.
Yeah, and I also think like something with the risograph specifically is when like you can work digitally on the risograph, so and that can feel really complicated to prepare your files properly, but something that it forces is to understand the analog processes that preceded it, like screen printing, mimeography. And I think when you provide a really entry-level prompt to people, there's a level playing field, even if, there's a disparity in skill. So there's less hierarchy and people are just like learning through this shared discovery. And something that we both had been talking about is how this also supports this idea of ungrading and process-based rubrics as well.
Um, Interestingly enough, it's not unlike what happened, I'd say, in the late 90s, early noughties, when students also were asking, how they could work with their hands. And then there was this flood toward letterpress printing. Some of the art schools still had letterpress facilities. They were dusty, but they had never gotten rid of them. And all of a sudden, there became these classes in letterpress for the same exact reason, is that often so many young people, young talented people, draw before anything. They draw when they're really, really small, and they enjoy working with their hands. They're also digital now. Of course, they're digital natives, and they're used to being online, but I think that there'll always be creatives who are going to ask, what other methodology, what are the ways in which I can create, no matter what technology brings us, or so I've kind of experienced over my long career.
If I can
I
add something, sorry.
All right, go ahead.
I just wanted to say quickly, for me, I'm also like relearning some of my skills, like color theory, which is something that I use like with my students, like to teach it, but it's like how do I apply it myself to my work? So it's been interesting to kind of relearn that stuff.
Yeah, but I do agree with that. I mean, for our class, especially for type one, actually, like we have like pushing pixels as our like very first like warm-up project. Then we're kind of like shifting to like calligraphy, and also we have like 3 weeks long letterpress workshop for another project. And I think right now, like students more like engaged with just kind of like digital productions. I mean, like for my class, because Otis, there's like a really like huge population like of international students, and I think just for for this accessibility, probably like something which digitally is easier to carry around, especially for people who's not only rooted like in one single geographical space. But also we found out this like really interesting thing, which is like for our final project, we're turning this kind of like digital narrative also to this some like really analog way to make it. We're doing like vinyls, we're doing like collages, and also like hand painted a lot, and also like screen prints. And also like at the back we're trying to like archive it like purely digitally into like pictures, images, and photographies. But there's thing also happening like I think last year, which is from Google Drive. There's like 30% of the work it just like deleted like magically. So I think there's kind of like a pros and cons, which is where should we take this balance in between something with just like a physical archive and a digital archive, especially for like educators. And also is something we're trying to balance out like in the class, which is how can we let them know there are different like mindset for typesetting and also to learn typography and graphic design like nowadays from both perspectives. So yeah.
Anyone else care to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of want to like link this to some of Elizabeth's research too, but I think it also makes sense for like what RJ and Summer are doing with AI. I think often because students are so digital, you're finding that they are turning to Pinterest and whatever low stakes website they can find for information on designers and previous work. So I'm wondering like how to, I mean, either obviously their biggest resource is likely school, but how can there kind of be more online areas where we can direct students to like find these archives and different lists that you're starting to like employ in your teaching?
So a few notes. One of the things that I'm doing is in my classes, I have some pretty firm rules on AI usage. Particularly, you can use it for data analysis. You can even use it for brainstorming. And at the end of the day, regardless of what you're using it for, you still have to have the fundamentals and to be able to use whatever the output is in a meaningful way. But I've just been pushing the ethics hard. And it's one of those things where any single one of us can teach people how to use the software, right? That's the easy part, but we can't necessarily teach people how to think. And one of the things that I've been stressing with my students is it's that thinking, your design methodology, your process, your lived experience that helps give you your voice and your competitive advantage when you're in the field. So in tandem with that piece and trying to teach them about the ethical uses of AI, I have them researching, contemporary designers, all of the designers that we've looked up to for decades, and they're starting to see like their influences are coming into play, and seeing what designers past have done has been really informative in keeping them on an ethical usage of AI. The other part to this is, as far as I'm concerned, all of the AI tools that are out there, specifically if they're, or especially if they're integrated into the Adobe suite of products, they're not there. They're not good. You can't sacrifice all of the skills that you could develop solving problems in favor of AI. So you use the right tool for the right reason at the end of the day. And I'll put a pin in it there because I feel like I could go on and on and on. But I do also ask students to prove how they're using AI in their projects, and not really putting a judgment on that. Like, okay, if you're going to use AI, show me how you're using it. Let's explore it as a tool. Let's look at it from a methodological point of view. And assess from there?
One of the ways that I think it has helped my students the most, AI specifically, has been researching their target audience, because they're so stuck within like who they are as a consumer that when they go out in the world and they're working with audiences and creating campaigns that is not their age group, how can they formulate their ideas accurately, right? Like one example, it was a different class, but the student referenced, oh, I want to create this project, and it's going to be talking about how Gen X is old, and I was like, well, the first way to piss off Gen X is by calling them old, and really kind of getting to know, like, I want to stop you, and please go back and research a little bit more about your audience. As far as like the making goes, too, this project has changed. Students are not as comfortable with asking live models, so that's a requirement within this project that they actually have to use human beings, and they have to ask them. Like I have to ask friends and family, and they can get a little uncomfortable with that. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. So that's, interesting with this group of students. And then I've also noticed the change in tech, which is the use of, we used to want to rent out the DSLRs to shoot. And now they feel much more comfortable with their phones, and their phones are actually good enough, right, for these large 18 by 24 posters that they're doing. So yeah, and let me say one more thing that I've been throwing out there with ethics is, as they go out into the world, I've been having them examine actual creative briefs. And then when they're out there, yes, like do what the client asks, but maybe you can figure out how can you also come up with an idea that is for social, like good, like how can you do good for the world but also meet the requirements of the brief.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting insights, and when we talk about communication, an AI tool as a communication tool, like it's interesting to see how students have to learn how to prompt the AI, and I know RJ talked about struggles of like the platform not being able to do certain things, and then but then seeing how students will struggle with communicating with actual people, when you're talking about your experience, Summer, with your students and working with real, like actual people. And so it seems like a new skill is really uh, evolving in this sort of communication. Not new, I mean, we've always had to be able to communicate, and I think design educators do focus on that as part of what they do, but as a real kind of learning outcome for students, whether it's with technology, or whether it's with actual people. So it's a thought I was kind of thinking as everyone was sharing. I wanted to ask our panelists. Oh, it looks like we have a question from the audience. So I will take that question first. This is Teresa Trevino asks Elizabeth, how many women were left out? How was that process? You talk about, yes, identifying your subjects in your book.
Well, first, thank you for that question, because I think that's an important one. When I began this project, I emailed all of the people that I know who are interested, again, I'll just use the words rebalancing the canon. I mean, are interested in telling decolonializing graphic design, telling stories of those voices who have been basically hidden or quieted. And there are quite a few educators and design scholars and even some design historians who have been doing research in looking for these stories to bring them to light. So my basic process was to ask them in their own individual cultures, because it's very international. That was my point. It was not going to be American or European focused. It had to be as universal as I could possibly make it. To suggest a woman designer who they knew in their own culture. So many of these women were actually fairly successful in their own culture and somewhat known in their own culture. And so, but not known outside of their borders, let's say. And so these would come in, and as long as the contributor was willing to do the research and write this, what turned out to be bespoke piece of writing and research, and they were given a year to, most of them were given a year to do this because they are educators and they needed to fit it into their schedule. Their work was accepted. I did do a fair amount of editing, as many of the essays that were written by people who had English as a second language. And as any of you know who have studied the Romance languages, their sentence structure is entirely different than English. So, again, I tried to make it as easy and readable as possible. So was anybody left out? No. As long as the person, there was only one unfortunate contributor who chose someone who didn't have archives, didn't have family, didn't have colleagues that she could interview, and had very little work. And she could not produce, with so little resources, the needed essay that had to be at least 2,000 to 4,000 words. And so there was one person, and I felt really bad, but let's just say she didn't choose wisely. So there was only one left out of the book. And a few of the contributors who had put up their hands and they said, I want to do this, I'm going to do this. A few of them dropped out along the way when they realized that possibly they didn't have the time or the passion and the inclination to really see it through. When you see these stories, when you read these stories, you will understand how much work goes into making them happen. And to check the sources. Sources are really important. They're mostly, in many ways, first person sources, which is important, as there's so much erroneous information out there on the internet. And even in my early days when I tried to write about Jackie Casey in 2008, I got it wrong because I used secondary sources. And boy, did that teach me a huge lesson. You have to be rigorous. You have to chase it down. You have to get many sources, and most of them need to be first person sources.
Kind of great that it was such an inclusive process, though. And as a short follow-up, was there any concern with editorial oversight with that process that you wanted to include everyone?
What do you mean by editorial oversight?
Well, just with working with an editor, if you wanted to include everyone and they didn't have any issue with having to cut people for word count or that sort of like logistical things that an editor would come at you with. That's what I was wondering.
All right, Kat, so here it is. You sign a contract. The project, the economic project is based on your word count. So you agree on a word count. Bloomsbury is pretty good. You could go, I hope nobody hears this, 10% over, which I have done in the past, but not a lot more. So initially I went out there with 40 essays. And there were so many I wanted to include. I could do another book of another 40. There's so many of these stories out there. But I had to maintain the word count. I was the editor. And I knew, being a graphic designer, making deadlines, working within parameters, specifications, we know this. We're professionals. So I came in at my word count. And that's what limited it to 42, or I would have kept going.
There is another question for Sarah. I'll read this aloud. How effective do you think these kinds of embodied immersive tactics are in communicating the emotional experience of language barriers?
Well, okay. I have a little bit of a problem with my internet, and I hope you can hear me clearly. Yeah?
Yes.
Can you? Oh, all right. Okay, great. Well, so I think embodied and immersive tactics are extremely effective because they move the experience from something abstract to something felt. Uh, well, I saw that audience reported like a time of frustration when they interact with the piece, and I realized that people naturally try to correct miscommunication. They move closer, or sometimes speak slower, or like repeat themselves, or adjust their gesture. So, which I think all these show that how successful the piece was, and how help native speakers to put like themselves in the shoes of non-native speakers and the struggle that they go through daily. So I think these strategies mirror the real effort non-native speakers make daily. So yeah, they all like recorded a time of frustration that was intentional to the project. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that was great. Thank you. I have a question for RJ. I wonder, I see so many of the pros of using AI as a strategy for, especially for processing information when there's a lot to do. I think you speak on that in your video presentation, but I wonder if you've thought about, or if you could share some of your own thoughts on potential risks or trade-offs when using AI in that way. Thinking about things like bias, or have you considered how bias or oversight, human-machine interaction dynamics might alter the information that you glean when you're using it as part of your process?
I think that RJ actually had to jump off to pick up his daughter from her appointment. So
Oh,
I don't know if anybody else wants to weigh in on that topic.
if so, please do. But I can move to another question too. Maybe we could switch to, it's kind of related, but I'll talk about concepts of authorship. I know Kyla and Vic, you talked about the RISO graph, and as a tool for kind of slowing down. It's also a tool for sort of creating an even playing field with your students. And I wonder whether in your own creative practice or in your teaching, if you think about the things that you're making with the RISO as kind of a way to slow down and find authorship in your work. Do you think you could speak a little bit toward that, either from your own experience or from student perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally, like any time that you employ like a hands-on based process, like authorship is already embedded within that. So, if students are constantly using AI or trying to model their designs after what they're seeing on other Behance pages or different, references that they're finding or what they're deeming as quote unquote good graphic design, like across Instagram, social media, one way to counteract that is just by letting them play and showing them the possibilities of how to take a silly collage that was made with tissue paper and turn it into a zine. So I think something like a lot of this practice, or at least like my side of it, was modeled after a workshop that I took at Do the Print in Barcelona, which was a very low cost workshop where participants are asked to create 2 different layers of designs to assign to 2 different colors. And then when it's done, we turn that into a 4-fold zine that has information on one side of it. So you already feel that you authored that particular artifact or output because of your input. I don't know if you want to add to that, Vic, because I know you're making a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah, so I'm self-taught when it comes to the Rizzo. So I'm still like trying to figure things out. But with students, one thing that has been powerful in our community at Texas State is that a lot of them have want to learn similar things. So sometimes we put like zine togethers and we have like very specific prompts. And by them watching like in real life what other students are doing, like it kind of helps their own practice. And also like I've been able to like apply some of that stuff to my own practice. But even though sometimes we're taking images that already exist, things like that, they can still create like their own version that reflects either their point of view or things that they want to see, things that they want to explore. With the ink, with the Rizzo semi-transparent, so there's a lot of things to learn, like how do you light your colors, the color that you print first is your dominant color. So all this stuff that they haven't thought about before that apply to other things like screen printing and other printmaking practices, it kind of like piques their curiosity and expands their knowledge that they can apply into other things, whether it's graphic design, printmaking, or fine arts.
Mhm. Can I ask a question of Summer? Summer, do you
Absolutely.
get pushback from your students when you ask them to choose their models and photo and interact and art direct the shoot?
Mhm. Um, they know the project is coming, right? Because they've seen it hung in the hall previous years, and I do address it on the first day. Um, I've only once had major pushback, and then they felt more comfortable going home and asking their family members.
Oh,
Okay. And then I have also had I just created an Excel doc that they share, and then if they like, I can help you with photography if you help me with being a model, or I'm looking for this prop, I can help you with some of your copywriting. So that is just something I have started. And then I also let them know that's the only time that they will ever have to be sort of forced to use a human in their ads. And then I also remind them if they are at the core like an illustrator, you can still incorporate some illustration in, right? And how you can actually make your ads, your photos, maybe your photos aren't that great, how you can enhance them with stuff that you are good at. So, and I also let them know, right, that I'm not grading them on the final outcome heavily. It's more about the process and the concept and how much planning goes into making a shoot and having it be effective. So yes, I do. But it's not, but like I almost put like uh cushions there, so it's not as
do
scary.
what you can you do what you can do to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Students need so many different types of experiences, I
Right,
think,
because you don't know where they're gonna
in
go.
school, because yes, they really don't know when they're entering, what their first job probably is going to be, or what it's going to entail, or what skill sets they'll need to use in order to actually even perform in the job successfully. I mean, they just, I mean, they're not future readers. And I think the more experiences we can, and this is in my personal opinion, um, give our students, even if they're uncomfortable, especially if
Yeah.
they're uncomfortable doing it, is really a gift to them, even though they don't realize it at the time. But we know it.
Yeah.
Summer, as a follow-up, do you feel like you have a key takeaway from that project and that course that students really respond to or remember?
Sure. So the whole process of the planning, like they have to I give them the outline of a pre-pro plan that would be very similar to what is in the field when you're creating a shoot, and how exciting it can be. Um, my favorite thing that comes out of the project though really is, and I mentioned it earlier, is the students who feel that they are really lacking in some great design talent, especially illustration, and
Mm.
then suddenly they just come to life. Like I have a specific student who was like almost uncomfortable sitting in the classroom because he was that um, unconfident, right? And then this project, he just shined. And his peers even were like, wow, you're so good at this. And so it's just been a great project that I continue to adapt over the years. And for some people, they never want to see it again, right? But it really has a lot of benefits.
That's great. A question for Jalen. We're talking about teaching and the process that you talked about through your course, working with physical and analog first, and then digital and 3D. I wonder if you've thought about how it helps students think about typographic fundamentals, and if you could expand on the benefits of that, really thinking about tools and dimension and what you're trying to teach in terms of typography with your students.
I'm so sorry. I think the first half is cut out a little bit.
Oh,
Can you recap a little bit the first half
yeah.
question?
But
Sorry
just
for
thinking
that.
about how you're working with technology and tools to teach typography with your students. You showed a lot of amazing outcomes from what the students created and working in analog and digital and 3D. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about teaching type and working with those sorts of mediums to teach typographic principles.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Actually, I think for as I'll start from this kind of like as a graphic like intro to graphic class for a student who's majoring communication actually from Boston University like 2 years ago. And from that class, actually we started up with one pretty exciting like workshop is how we can build like a 3D typographical form on this VR environment. And so I have the images and also like on my website. And later on, we're also like bring this workshop to the Cooper Union. There is another conference as called Typographics. And so we did this 1 day like lecture. So there's like AR typography in the morning, and also we have this VR typography in the afternoon. So after that, we are actually really think about like how like for like the fundamental knowledge of like typography and anatomy, there are serif, there are baseline, there are spacing, but how we can actually achieve that in this like purely like virtual environment, especially in this like a digital age. And also we as I'm just like always ask myself, is that important or is that different from the thing that we are working on the paper nowadays? And also I think the AR is gonna like fade away, and also like there are lots of trends coming and go. There are like metaverse, there are like blockchains, and also we have AI right now. We do know how long it can last, but all those kind of like new things is exciting, but also it scares people, especially for students, like how many they should learn, or like what is the workflow in the future. They will get like super confused, and it also is overwhelming. I mean, like for students and also for designers, like are we gonna change the way that how we are gonna work in the future? But so we're trying to see all those new technology as a way, which is uh just new tool, and trying to create this like more flexible like methodology and workflow for students to work on at the beginning, which is they are able and they are so welcome to bring new stuff and tools into the process, which is they are making things. So instead of we are trying to like start with, like uh Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, we're trying to be more like integrated and also just let them know there no such standardized or like one single way to make things. Not everyone start from sketch on paper, then turn it like to digital files. There are you can start with some like digital sketches, even though like you can do type start with motions, animations, and bring them into like still images. Um, so that's kind of like why we are doing this, especially for type 1. So we're trying to like embracing there this kind of like traditional way to typeset it. There are letter presses, and also there are like digital softwares, and also there also there's like more like middle space, and also even and I think it's even larger than this like two like duality of this kind of like approaches for designing, which is uh we're gonna work with them together. We're gonna use all of the things together, and also we have to keep learning, but it's not a scary thing. It's just whatever you need, dig into it and make it happen. And also as faculties being more supportive and also be more like open-minded. Also that's something which is I think could also like be more engagement for the students. Um, I'm not sure that that's a correct question for this, but we're kind of like trying to like unfold that like philosophy into the class and see what they have at the end, because it's kind of tough for student which is having their like it's more like open-ended prom for their like first class. But I think that's something also as some like creative person we have to propose a lot to the clients in the future, especially we know more and the tools are changing, and that's also like essential skill to learn. And I'm also teaching like senior project and senior thesis, so there are lots of like a really wonderful idea in the project later on after 4 years like learning. So really proud of like how the new generation actually can adapt it and also like absorb it and turn it into something that is really exciting at the end. Mm, so yeah, so that's kind of like
Mhm.
why, like I mean, like kind of like the thought like behind it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's such an interesting, thank you for your response. I think in beginner classes, it seems like we might try to simplify things to focus on core ideas, but we're kind of living in a world where there's all sorts of tools that and methods and processes, and they're kind of we're all inundated in it, and so it kind of makes sense to bring that into the narrative right from the beginning with students. So I appreciate your response. I had a question for Sarah, since we are talking a little bit about tools, and in your work, you work across a lot of different mediums, from the coding and light and shadow and the physical installation. Would you care to expand a little bit on that process of creating your work and working across all of these mediums?
Yeah, of
How
course.
did you do
So
it?
yeah, so mostly I come from a graphic design background, but once I came here I mean in Ohio University, I started to experiment with new technologies and like incorporate them into my art and design. And it wasn't easy at the beginning, but I started to learn. And fortunately, with the help of AI, I could do coding process a little bit more easier. So yeah, so I started with the coding, with the projection mapping, like things like motion tracking, and why I used these tools, because I believed that it gives me this opportunity to like let the viewers, let the audience feel the experience in real time. I think I couldn't find any other tools like more useful than coding, because it was responsive in real time. So that's why I started to learn them and incorporate them into my art and design, to be able to convey my message, instead of being something internal, private in the mind of a non-native speaker. With the help of all these tools, I made it invisible and external for others as well. And yeah, that was amazing, like experimenting with all these tools that I wasn't an expert in them, but I'm happy that I started to learn them, to work with them. Uh, they are like give me an enjoyable experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that phrase, invisible and external. So a great way to think about the tools and the medium and the installation. There's a question to all the panelists. Given the current climate and risk of research defunding, how have academics shifted their language or focus to avoid being flagged as investigating problematic topics? It's a tough question. You think about
I
it
put
from
in
any
the chat
lens.
that that's where collaboration can really help with other
Mhm.
people and focusing on the learning outcomes. But go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I think pivoting to and seeing opportunities versus being feeling like you're being censored. Like my research deals with a lot of stuff that can be considered problematic, and it's definitely being flagged. But this beautiful opportunity with Kyla presented, so I'm focusing my energy on, you know, right now. Like I'm gonna focus on that, and then when the time comes, then I can probably pivot back. But it's it's unfortunate that we are where we are, and we gotta protect our peace and protect ourselves, which is something that I'm trying to do, because I feel like even my own existence can be political right now. So just trying to find the light where I can find that, and Kyla has been a great collaborator to do this, and I think just finding people that not only understand you, but also are willing to help you move forward, even if you may not be able to work on your own research or things that you've been working for a while. There's always an opportunity out there. It's about just seeking it. Things are hopefully not going to be like this forever. Um, and for me, it's like I need to do what's best for me so I can keep offering my students my energy, my positivity, and my skills, because that doesn't stop. Like things change, but students are also having questions, students are also scared. So just trying to, show them that I understand, I relate, but let's see how we can unite during this time, and what kind of stuff we can create, at least for the here and now, and then you know restart or continue our research. So I'm losing my words a little bit, because it's a really heavy topic for me, but I want to stay positive, and I want to continue doing work no matter where I'm at, or no matter what type of like climate we're living through.
Thank you for sharing. Did anyone else want to speak to that question? Maybe add a thought too with collaboration is something I've been thinking about, is trying to focus on the building community component rather than retracting in ourselves, right? And I've found that as a kind of a proactive way to just kind of refocus the energy in a time that feels frustrating when particular projects get flagged. I know I have an experience where I'm working on a oral history project with Eastern North Carolina LGBTQ community, and that's been one that's lost funding, which has been hard. We've been kind of moving forward in other avenues and just kind of building our community. But yeah, it's a frustrating scenario. So, but I really like that when, what you mentioned about collaboration and what you shared, Vic, as well of preserving oneself. I think building community is also a term I like to think about when that helps.
I also think like there are so many great educator communities also like this, where I think because maybe this was perhaps a good thing about being remote during the pandemic, is that people were able to kind of organize with one another and share their ideas and work. Like Elizabeth, you seem to be doing that and have been doing that. And like sometimes even the term like collectivism can be like a scary word in some circles. So even combating like what a collective practice means, or just reframing it as community-based practices to meet the moment.
Mhm.
I am thinking like I I'm not sure like is there any way that we can turn this as educator or as designer we can turn this like problematic topics into something which is as a metaphor, like metaphorical topic. So it's not like directly like we are like focused on the problem itself. We're kind of like slightly, drawing lines and then sketch them up to build this form which is a lot we create this kind of entry point which a lot of people to see the problem instead of we are pointing them out. So like in digital culture, there's a thing which is I think has never happened in this physical world is the cancel culture. Because you can never like shut one person's mouth in the real life, but like online is an easy way to do. And also there is this kind of like cancel culture for the propaganda wise for this political issue in China and I, as a designer, I was the way I reacted, I created this kind of like coded typeface. So it's really each single letter is either a flower or grass. So when I type it, it has like a really like tight kerning, so it becomes this like garden or bouquet-ish like texture. But you can find a way to like explain it and also unfold it, so it's more like a coded typeface. So I wonder if there are some ways actually as designers so we can turn it something more tender, more soft. And as it can also be interesting and also just open up another perspective instead of like being rage and also just point out that's something which is like problematic. But just my thought.
That's a great question to leave the conversation on that we can ponder. We are getting close to our time. So what we'd like to do at the end of our session is just go around one more time, and I'd like to ask each of you, what you have going on next that we can look forward to as before we say goodbye to our attendees. So if we can go around the same order, we'll start with you, Elizabeth.
I've just submitted a new book proposal with the working title Developing Feminist Designers. Again,
Yay!
you know.
Yes.
Yes, and so it just went in, so it usually takes a few months for it to be peer reviewed and all the other things that the business does, but I'm hoping it will be green lighted. It will be similar in structure to the one I produced for Bloomsbury in 2016, developing citizen designers. So yeah, I rely on the community that I've built up in order to create these pedagogical materials.
It's great. Congrats on that. Kyla and Vic.
Yeah, I mean, other than doing some fun Rezo stuff with Vic, I wish I could say nothing, but I am. Uh, I'm working on just presentations to for my Interaction 2 assignment that I created called Parts Unknown, and it's about hand coding websites for restaurants in HTML and CSS with a lot of constraints to fight against AI support or use AI support. So that's something I'm focusing on.
Wow, exciting.
Yeah, for me, and then working with Kyla, we're making extra prints of our stuff, so eventually compile it a book that we can make copies of it. So we're printing like 20 to 25 copies. So we'll make like a limited amount of books that will be fully RISO printed. But one thing that I've been observing my students and that I'm testing out a little bit is how to teach to the specific generation. So some things that I'm introducing in my class is fidget toys, and that seems to be very successful during critiques. Like they like to just fidget with stuff, and I thought it would be distracting, but I feel like it's helped them engage a little bit more, and also finding new ways for students to participate in critiques. Not everyone's comfortable talking, so I also pass out like note cards to students that are not comfortable speaking. They can write notes and pass it to the students. So just working on different ways to adapt to them versus trying to, like implement things that maybe I learn or the way I learn, because that may not work for them. So I'm constantly just like asking, trying new things, and I'm there for them. So I want to make sure that they have the experience that they can get something out of it, whether it's a good piece, learn something, or just finding the comfort or like their critique style. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
That's great. Yeah, as a sidebar too, we have a RISO at our school. We do RISO Fridays. So if you want to do a collaborative exchange, let me know. Sidebar. Summer, what do you have going on next?
It's like I'm trying to figure out like what
I know.
specifically to say, tomorrow, let's go with tomorrow, right? I am doing a workshop with another professor where we bring in high school juniors, seniors to teach them a little bit about what they would be doing if they decided to come to our university and enter the field of design. Recruitment's always kind of at the top of my list to do. So that's what I have going on as far as tomorrow. And then in the long term, I have a grant that I'm trying to assess and always think about the equity of the portfolio review process of entering into college, right? As we see a lot of programs in high schools where the art programs are being diminished. And when we are looking for students to enter and submit their portfolio, are we being equitable? So that's one of my big things.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much. Jalen, how about you?
Well, I think Igor and I are gonna launch another project, which is we're trying uh to visualize how big is 1 megabyte in this real world, and it will be like a super interesting like experimental like photography project, but yeah, so we're trying to launch it for next year, and also I'm gonna lead the senior exhibition next year, so yeah, just exciting things.
It's great. Yes, thank you. And Sarah, what do you have going on?
Well, overall, I would continue expanding the emotional dimension of the work, and yeah, and like exploring new technologies to like convey my message. And the piece that I've just created, it's like a piece that when someone talking to it, it is going to show their words in a like circle, and from the other side of the circle there are like Persian letters that enter, and like representing the constant loop of translation that is happening in the mind of a non-native speaker. So this is the piece that I'm working on these days, and I haven't finalized it yet, but I'm excited to like explore more and see how I can like make this invisible circle visible, yeah, to others.
Great. I'd like to thank all of our panelists again. Thank you so much for bringing your work and your knowledge and your thoughts to us and having this conversation today with us. And thanks to our attendees for your questions and joining us this morning and now afternoon. I did want to make just a quick reminder announcement that if you are interested in hosting a colloquium virtually or in person, to please reach out to me or Dan or anyone on the Design Incubation team to learn more about that process. We are also always looking for peer review support for our regular Design Incubation events. And so if you're interested in that, please reach out. Our next call will open likely early spring, and our next event, which is planned for virtual, will be well, our next event, excuse me, that's in person will be at CAA. So if you're at the College Art Association in February, we will be there in Chicago. Please join us. That call has already gone through though and open and closed. And so our next call is early spring, and that will be for the June event, which would be another virtual event. And we do plan to do a concurrent event where we'll have one panel as our regular research panel, and then the other panel being specifically for graduate, since we have been getting more interest from graduate students with our colloquiums. So I think that's everything for announcements. Dan, please pipe back in if I missed anything, but I just want to say thank you one more time to our panelists and thank you everyone. This has been a really wonderful event, and I appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.